Welcome on in to the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. On this episode, going to talk a little spring ball. We had our second media session up there watching 20 minutes of practice and got some takeaways. Now 2 weeks of practice session watching. So I've got some ideas, some thoughts on the football program. But the meat and potatoes of this show is my conversation with Andrew Crowley, a.k.a. Runnin Hoops, and we break down all things Utah basketball. But let's start with Utah football. We were back up at practice on Tuesday watching spring ball, and gotta say, I've been impressed with what I've seen from the new offense with Jason Beck and Devin Dampier and the new offense. And it's interesting. This is definitely going to look quite a bit different than what we've seen over the last few years at Utah football under Andy Ludwig, where so much of the offense was, the inside zone run game and building everything off of that. So much of the offense looked the same. And I think with this new offense, with Devin Dampier, you've got a really strong run game. You've got an option game that I think is going to bring in a lot of different looks, a lot of variance in play calls, and I think that'll be exciting for Utah fans to get a first look at when we get to see these guys hopefully in action during the spring ball game. But really, that's been my biggest takeaway has just been the diversity of play calls and different looks that we've seen so far through our practice viewing sessions. Is that there's a real emphasis on changing the looks, changing play calls, running inside, running outside, running QB, running jet sweeps, running option stuff. Just so many different looks, and I think that's really exciting. And I think I've asked coaches a lot about this, Coach Whittingham and Coach Harding. I think the offensive line is really going to shine in this new offense with what it asks of the offensive line, obviously being more physical and being more tailored to the run game, which is why a lot of these offensive linemen committed to Utah in the first place, is because this program is built on running the ball, and that's why a guy like Keith Olson, a guy like Spencer and all of those guys, they came here right because they believe in Jim Harding. They believe in the offense, and they love run blocking. Offensive linemen love run blocking. They love being physical. They love being those guys, and I think we've seen that through a couple practice sessions that this offensive line is really really doing a good job. So we've seen a lot of good runs, a lot of big plays on the run game with the run game. Wayshawn Parker, I think, has ripped off a handful of explosive runs, and obviously explosive with being relative. It's 10 yards, it's 15 yards, but there are runs where you see Wayshawn's game and his strengths. Right, he is a no nonsense runner. He's going to put his foot in the ground once he identifies the crease. He's going to put his foot in the ground and get upfield. And if he needs to make a cut back to the backside, he's going to do that. He's not going to dance. He's not going to stutter his steps. He's just going to put his foot down. And he's going to go. And what stood out most about Wayshawn is his pace. He understands the need to run with pace, to change pace. Whether he needs to, get to the line quickly or whether he needs to take his time. That's really stood out to me in watching Wayshawn and how he operates. Now, outside of Wayshawn, who has definitely looked like RB1, Daniel Bray, the true freshman, early enrollee from North Crowley, Texas, has really shown some promise, and he's been really involved in the offense in each of the practice sessions that I've been to. He's been not only involved, but he's produced, and he's going to be incorporated in the passing game, and I think that's exciting. I think he'll probably remind folks of a young Mekhi Bernard, and I think the similarities between those two are there. And I think Bray is a dynamic athlete, great speed. And so I think Bray is a really exciting player for this season, but also for the future. So you've got Wei Shun, you've got Bray. Watch Devin Green, rip off a big run yesterday at practice. Nakari Rogers just continues to do his thing and run tough, run inside, and all that sort of stuff. So, feel really good about the running back room and the offensive line and how it looks in not only in the run game, but in pass protection too. There's been, quite a few plays where Devin Dampier has just sat in the pocket and taken his time and identified the open receiver and got the ball to him. Like, I think Devin Dampier is really going to benefit playing behind this offensive line, not only because of what they're going to be able to do in the run game and what Devin will do with his legs, but because he's going to have time in the pocket. I think, he's obviously created an identity of being this sort of magician, right? When it comes to the throw game, of having to create, with his legs, to buy time, to get out of the pocket, to make guys miss and all that sort of stuff. But I think, we've seen a handful of plays each practice where he's had plenty of time in the pocket. And there was one play where I swear it was like 4 seconds he sat in the pocket looking for somebody to get open. And, obviously Utah I think they had an extra tight end in blocking, so they had 6. They only had 3 out on a route. But, Dampier had 4 seconds, and then, he just tucked the ball, ran, picked up 15 yards. And so I think, you're going to see a lot of that. And I think it's going to be important for fans to realize that, Dampier, where you may see a dip in terms of passing ability from what we've seen, in recent years, you're going to make up for it substantially with what he's able to do with his legs. And honestly, he's impressed as a passer. The first time I watched him, there were definitely some errant throws, but on Tuesday, I don't recall a bad miss. He made a couple of really timely throws. He made a layered throw to Dadron Zipper on a deep out route, getting it in between the corner and safety over the top. Made some, where he struggles is when he has to throw with velocity and he has to put a lot on it. He's got to put the mustard on it. That's where he tends to, those errant throws, those errant misses tend to come from, is when he's got to, really rifle it in there. And he hasn't had to do that. I don't know if he's figured something out. Obviously it's a short amount of time that I've been able to watch him, but I've watched a lot of film on him, and, seeing him up close, I've been really impressed with, his accuracy and what he's been able to do as a passer. I'm not saying he's going to be, make a significant leap in terms of his completion percentage. That's not what I'm predicting. I'm just saying that I've been really impressed with what he's been able to do as a passer. So obviously a lot goes into that. And it's not just accuracy with the ball. It's timing. It's understanding where, who's open, where to go with the ball, where the defense is allowing those opportunities to come. And I think that's where that experience tends to allow quarterbacks to slow down. So with Devin Dampier, he looks like the quarterback. He looks like the guy. He looks like QB1. And, talking to everybody, I think more than anything, his leadership is exactly what this program needs. He's been such a great teammate through the first few months here with Utah. He's taken the offensive line out to eat a number of times. He's welcomed players over to his crib, to his house, just to hang out. I think there's a real camaraderie with Dampier and everybody around him that I think, for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't there, in the past. And I think Dampier has really come into the program with the right mindset, with the right attitude, and with that exactly the sort of leadership that Utah needed to kind of turn the tides around, to turn the vibes, you know, to improve the vibes. I think that's been really key for Utah is what he's been able to bring to the table with his personality and leadership. He's well liked by everybody. And talking to people, around the program, he is very well liked and just has that personality that, much like Cam, when he took over in 2021, that's those same sort of comments. You're hearing, similar things to that effect. So beyond Dampier, we got to look at Isaac Wilson and Jamari Bird Ficklin, and really impressed with Ficklin, the lefty. Made a couple of really nice passes. He's obviously an athlete and is going to be used in that option game, and we saw the athleticism as well. He orchestrated a drive against a defense that was comprised of second and third teamers, but still to see him throw the ball with good velocity, with making accurate throws. I've been impressed with how accurately, how tightly, that spiral is on his throws. I've been really impressed with, where he's at in terms of his throwing ability. So obviously we're going to have a lot to learn about Ficklin and what does he look like against better competition? What does he look like against defenses that he doesn't see on a daily basis? This is the same sort of talk that we had about Isaac, last year, and what we learned with Isaac, this past season, is there's a whole nother realm, a whole nother world, on the other side of the ball that these guys have to learn and have to go through, and that's identifying defenses, identifying coverages, what they're going to be. There's just so much. It's so much more complex at this level. So it's encouraging that Ficklin is looking good, but and it's good to buy stock in him right now. But we do not need to create the Ficklin hype train. We need to allow him and give him time to continue to get his feet under him at this level. And just allow him to work through it and to progress at his time, at his pace. So, with Isaac, I think, you still see the talent with him. You still see the arm talent, but it's clear that his confidence is shook, that, this past season really did a number on him. And so I hope that fans don't give up on Isaac, because you still see the talent. He's still able. He still throws a great ball. He's accurate. But he needs time to regain that confidence, to gain comfort in the offense. And I think, we'll see what the plan is going to be for him moving forward. You hope that Devin Dampier remains healthy all year long, and we'll knock on wood to not curse anything, obviously. But ideally, Isaac goes into the season as, QB2, QB3, whatever it ends up being, and he doesn't see the field. He can redshirt, if you play him in 4 games, whatever. But if he can redshirt, that would be ideal. And if he can serve as a backup while redshirting, I think that would be great as well. But I think Isaac just needs time. And this is not to say that he's, playing poorly. There's certainly an understanding that he's learning an entirely new offense, and so it's going to take time for him to get up to speed and all that. But Jason Beck has been very complimentary of his ability to digest this offense and pick up on things. But again, digesting it in the QB room is one thing, but you got to go out and you got to execute, and I think that's just sort of the process we're at with Isaac. So. Seen some good things, seen some bad things, but I think ultimately, fans just need to give him that space, give him that time, and I think, Isaac will be right back on track where he needs to be. So, a wide receiver, this group is pretty interesting. When the few practice sessions that I've watched, Ryan Davis has been a consistent contributor in terms of the targets that he's gotten, and just he's operating with confidence in what he's doing. I think that's pretty evident. There's chemistry there, and so it makes sense that he's a guy that's producing early on in the first couple weeks of spring ball. The rest of the group, there's Dadron Zipper that's really produced and had a lot of opportunities and capitalized on them. I think he's really impressed. Creed Whittemore had a really productive day on Tuesday, and that's been an improving trend for him from what I've gathered. He's a guy that he's got that sort of short area burst and quickness and change of direction that I think will be it'll lead to some exciting moments and exciting plays after the catch. So you like what you have there. You like what you have in Zipper, and then other guys, Zacharias Williams, Otto Tia, and Justin Stevenson. Those are three guys that are, I think, I don't want to say they're struggling, but you can tell that they're not operating at full speed just yet, that there's still a bit of, acclimating to this new offense. So, I do think there's good signs, there's good plays being made, and sometimes it's one guy makes a play, another guy makes a play, a different guy makes a play, and a different guy makes a play. I think Witt, his comments on Tuesday talking about still needing to see separation, I do think that there is something to that, but I don't think it's because guys aren't making plays. I think there is playmaking in the room. It's just from the collective whole and not from, a couple guys separating themselves as a couple individual go-to guys. So, some good things happening there. I understand the concern and worry, and I do think Utah would benefit from adding another receiver in the transfer portal. But I think this group is still in a solid place, and so Utah has work to do with their pass catchers. But it's one thing that's been really positive has been Landon King and Dallin Bentley. Their emergence, they've been very involved in the offense, and I think that's exciting. I think Landon King is certainly set up for success in this offense. I think he can be, a really good target for Devin Dampier just at his size. With his athleticism, he can be that sort of big body target with the big catch radius. I think that is where Landon can really benefit Dampier the most, is just that catch radius that he has. So seen him catch a couple passes each time that I've watched, and I know that he's been very involved in practices that I haven't watched as well. So same with Dallin Bentley. It sounds like those two are big targets for Dampier. So that's the stuff on the offense side of the ball. Defensively, start up front with the defensive line. Really impressed with Cash Dillon. He's been very involved with the first unit. Sounds like he's made good steps for it. I think he can be a good complement to Logan Fano on the other side. Interior, Aliki Vamahi, Dallas Vakalahi, those guys are at the top of the list for a reason. They're big, they're strong, they're powerful. The guys behind him, Jonah Lea'ea and Carson Kafusi, have both shown promise in certain moments. I watched Carson Kafusi get into the backfield once or twice. Jonah Lea'ea has been, he's knifed into the backfield at least once that I can remember. And then Mike Taltioli is, he had a big tackle for loss on Tuesday, got into the backfield in a hurry. And he seems like a guy that can help, can contribute at that defensive tackle spot. So I've been encouraged with what we've seen along the defensive line. Lance Holtzclaw was really dynamic in the first couple times that I watched him. Brings good juice off the edge. I think he can be a real dynamic pass rusher for Utah. At linebacker, you've got Lander, you've got Levani, John O'Hall. His comfort level in the defense in year 2 as a linebacker, I think is really exciting. He looks more comfortable. He looks more sure of himself in terms of what he's doing when he's reading and reacting, specifically more so in coverage. But he's got that athleticism that Utah needs in the middle of the field. Lander Barton, looks good. He looks more athletic than he did towards the end of the season. But each of these guys have all talked about the determination to be better than they were in 2024. And I think that's been the message from each of these guys on the defense side of the ball, is that, hey, we played well, but we know we've got to be even better. And there's a a matter of fact, a no nonsense type of tone when they talk about it, and that's exciting. In the defense secondary, this is where it's interesting. I'm really encouraged by starting at safety. Teo Johnson looks the part, looks like a guy ready to take a big step. Rabbit Evans looks like he's ready to take a big step forward. He's made some plays in the times that I've watched, both around the line of scrimmage and in deep coverage, so that's exciting. He certainly looks more comfortable, and so you feel good about what you have at safety. Have watched Jelani Davis. He's made some plays, and looks like he'll be able to, serve as quality depth, as good depth. Nathan Tillman, really encouraged by his range and athleticism. I like what Utah has in him. But obviously, everybody's wondering about the cornerback room. Scooby and Snowden, they're doing what they're doing. They're taking care of their business. They're looking the part. They're looking as you would hope they would look. I have watched Snowden get reps inside at the slot, and then also outside as well. So that there's that as well. But Blake Cotton has made some plays. Donovan Saunders, he just has so much size, so much length. Those two, really look the part. Jeremiah Caldwell, haven't seen too much of him, but he's got the length, he's got the height, but he's probably got to put on probably 10 pounds. The other two, Blake and Donovan, definitely look the part physically in terms of their readiness to play at this level. But I think Jeremiah Caldwell will benefit from time in the strength and conditioning program, but looks the part athletically. Looks like he's athletic enough to hang outside and all that, but certainly probably needs to add some weight before Utah's comfortable putting him out there. So what else has stood out from my practice viewing sessions? It's been good. There's been a good vibe around the program. You can definitely tell that the spirits are up, the vibes are up, and I think that's really encouraging. But there's still that sense of, it's not that they've forgotten about 2024. That's the motivating factor behind all of it. But I do think it's important for these guys to have fun, right? I think it's important for these guys to enjoy themselves. I think that was something that was lost. When we're talking about these improved vibes, I think it speaks to, the hunger that is there. A lot of these guys coming from programs where they didn't have success, where they haven't won championships, and you can feel that hunger, that desire, that want to be out there competing, working hard. When you've won championships, I'm not saying that guys got complacent or anything, but you get comfortable, and when you've been to the top, it's tough to repeat for very valid reasons. It requires a lot. You need a lot of hunger. You need a lot of hard work, and I think that's what Utah has gotten back to with the new guys in place, that they've got guys that are hungry, that haven't tasted that success just yet, and I think that's been a big part of it. But then, too, I already spoke on it earlier when talking about Devin Dampier, but I do think he's really done a lot to be the sort of leader to make sure everybody is feeling good. I think he's been super mindful of everybody around him. It seems like everyone you ask about Dampier have some sort of relationship with him, and I think that's extremely valuable to shifting the culture back to what it was, to getting back to that family culture. I do think, with everything that's gone on over the last 2 years, I think Utah sort of lost that spirit, lost that culture a little bit. And I think Dampier, just with everything he's done to building relationships, building friendships beyond football, I think is exactly what Utah needed. So I think the improved vibes stem a lot from that. Just, getting back to having fun, remembering that these are still young adults. These are still teenagers. As much as we want to talk about these guys are getting paid now and they should be treated as such, these are still young men. And it's important for these guys to have fun, and I think they're working hard. The hunger is there, and I think that's the big thing. So more to come from Utah football. We'll actually be up there on Saturday to watch a Saturday scrimmage, which will be really good for me to get to watch the practice up there at Rice Eccles Stadium. I'll have some good context around that. So excited about that. But I've talked a lot about Utah football. Let's get to my conversation with Andrew Crowley, aka Runnin Hoops. Let's get to that now. And joining me now, Andrew Crowley, a.k.a. Runnin Hoops, the man, the myth, the legend. The guy, basically the Wojnarowski of Utah basketball.
Yes.
Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I love that description. I like to think of myself as the person who has steered Utah fans through the last 4 years of Utah basketball.
You have. No, you should add that to the resume. The guy driving the wagon, leading us all through the desert land.
I'm like Washington crossing the Delaware, but now that Alex Jensen's back, you've got you and Furlong and all these other,
the reinforcements.
Yeah,
the reinforcements have come.
They're pushing me out of the way. They're like, get out of here.
You've been Captain America against Thanos in Endgame, and everybody now, and Alex Jensen shows up out of this crazy portal thing, and everybody else comes following. We're back, baby.
We're my back. Broken shield from covering Utah basketball alone.
Oh man, yeah, dude. No, it's good to have you back. Been a minute, been a couple weeks at least. I can't remember the last time we recorded together, but there's been a lot that's happened, to say the least. So, obviously, with this being the end of the season, Utah coming off a tough loss, 86-84 to Butler in the college basketball Crown tournament. What'd you make of that tournament?
Man, I was really disappointed that they did not get to bring home a physical crown. To me, you put that next to the Sunshine Slam trophy, and it's like, look, nobody can take those away from you. No. And I tweeted this, but I thought that, like the Stanley Cup, each player of the winning team should get to spend the day, with the crown, wearing it, whatever.
I love that idea.
I actually thought the two teams played pretty hard. I was surprised because I felt like going into the game, we were sold that, Butler was going to be three guys, a bit of a Hoosiers, my team's on the floor situation. And then, their guys just started hitting threes, and, Gabe Madsen dropped an F-bomb at the ref, and that was it. That was curtains for the Utes.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was. Just a microcosm of the season in general.
Yeah.
Decent start. You pick up momentum. You got a comfortable double-digit lead. Things are going well. It seems like you figured things out, and all of a sudden the wheels come falling off. And man, tough.
And when the wheels come off of this team, they come off. You know what I mean? It's not like they're wobbly. Right? It's like one is shot over to the, other side of the gym. It's crazy.
Knocked out a window.
Right.
Yeah. It was rough finish, but the season is officially over. And so now it's one of the most exciting times of the year. The transfer portal window is open, and there's just madness. We'll get to all that. Plenty to talk about. With you, Andrew, obviously with everything going on with Utah basketball, hires, transfer portal comings and goings, and withdrawings. No comings just yet.
That's right.
But goings and withdrawings in the transfer portal. Yes. But before we get into everything, let's start with our guy, Hunter Erickson. Entered the portal. And he has committed to the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. What a move. What a brilliant move. One last season of eligibility. Go out on top. Go out like a king and go play basketball down in Hawaii for a year.
The guy is flat out a genius, right? I mean, he's getting married in a couple weeks or a couple months. Yep. So he's basically going to have an extended honeymoon in Hawaii for a year. Like,
what a move.
Genius.
Yeah.
And honestly, like couldn't happen to like a better guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like Hunter, he's sort
class act the whole way.
Yeah. Big shot Hunter, big dunk Hunter. Most of those dunks, like when it didn't matter, but still, he still
they're still on the highlight reel. Yeah, it doesn't matter when they came; they're still there.
Yeah, he gave us some memorable moments during his time at Utah, and I couldn't be happier for him to go and take that bleach blonde hair to the Big Islands. Like he's gonna fit in perfectly there.
He'll be great. So excited for him. Needed to give Hunter a shout out. He was always great to talk with, and obviously, with his career at Utah, 2 years here, did some good things. A lot of people wanted more. Whatever. He did some great things. Helped Utah get some big wins over his 2 years here, and now he gets to go down to the Pacific Islands and enjoy some sun for the foreseeable future. So good for him. All right, Andrew, let's get to some meaningful discussion here for Utah fans, those that listen to the podcast, and we're going to hit on it all. We're going to hit on the coaching hires. We're going to hit on the transfer portal, the current roster, all of that sort of stuff. So let's start with Alex Jensen's first 2 hires. You did a podcast on this. You released it earlier this week. Great stuff. If you haven't listened to it already, shame on you. Go listen to that because you went in depth on each of these guys and why you think they're going to work at Utah. And so I'll just ask you, what did you make? What do you think? A quick synopsis of these 2 hires for Utah basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big concern when we found out that Alex was going to finish out the season in Dallas was, okay, who's doing the work for him? Because the current staff was focused on the crown and not recruiting for next year. I mean, that's, was pretty well known. And so when he got Coach Chilius on board, kind of the same week that he was introduced, I thought that was huge. He's got a resume that's as long as your arm in terms of, players he's coached, guys he's recruited. Alex put out a video. There was a video that the school did when Alex was hired where one of the things he says to Bill Riley is, I know what it looks like. And I think that you bring in a guy like Chilius and it's the same thing, right? Like he knows what it looks like. And when you're evaluating 1,000 players in the transfer portal and you've got to make quick decisions on, guys that you want to focus on, guys that you want to get in on visits, make offers to, all of that stuff. I think that, having somebody like, I don't know what we're going with, Coach Chills, Coach Chili, whatever the situation is there.
Gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah. But bottom line, like somebody who has sort of been in that arena for a long time, I think is really a brilliant hire. And, a guy with that resume coming to Utah when, let's be honest, they haven't been able to get coaches with those kinds of resumes recently. I think is great.
Yeah, I think the hire in and of itself, with Coach Chills, just the resume is alone is significant. But to make that the very first hire, just days after your official introduction to the program, to make that your first hire, I think was a big deal. I think it addressed a lot of questions around Alex Jensen and what his tenure was going to look like. To make that the first move, I think spoke to those concerns and question marks. Utah now has somebody, as you said, that knows what it looks like, but also has plenty of relationships with other people that knows what it looks like. And and that's going to benefit him moving forward as well. And it's going to help Utah. And we've already seen kind of the impact of those relationships. He's brought in a handful of transfers for official visits. His first full weekend on the job, he already brought in, visitors, and we'll talk more about all of that. But I thought that was a brilliant move to get a guy with that, with those sort of credentials, to make that your first hire. I think is significant. And then, to follow it up, to bring in Wes Wilcox as your general manager, to make those your first two hires. Obviously, that was the priority just based on, them being hired. But that was sort of what we heard, that Alex, that this was going to be the focus, that he wanted to bring in a GM, that he wanted to bring in somebody that could recruit, and to have it be, a guy with the as I said, the credentials that Chills has, and then Wes Wilcox, who has been, a general manager in the NBA, that's been an assistant and an executive in so many different forms and with multiple organizations. I think that's just tremendous for Utah and Alex as we continue to move forward with player compensation and soon revenue sharing. Programs, schools are going to be dealing directly with agents more and more and more until that's just how it is. And so to have somebody that has that experience working with agents, I think is just huge for Utah.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about, obviously, on both of our podcasts, about Utah's, NIL number this past season. And, it's one thing to say that a school has, 5, 6, 10 million in NIL. It's a completely other thing to, have somebody that understands sort of how to divvy that up, right? And how to build a roster that's got, players slotted with, certain salaries and things like that. And I think that, there are programs out there that are kind of resisting that. And then there are programs that are leaning into it. And, Utah historically feels like it's been one that's resisted that a little bit.
Yeah.
And
they've been slow.
Nice.
They've been slow to take action in this sort of front.
Yeah. And it's just nice to see sort of a forward thinking, like, okay, I'm doing my thing in Dallas. I got to have a guy that can negotiate these contracts. I can't leave it up to, somebody in the athletic department or an assistant coach or, whatever the combination is. I need somebody that has sort of been in that room, that negotiating room, and understands, okay, if we pay our point guard X, then we're probably going to have to pay our backup small forward a little less, right? Or whatever the situation is. And so, really like the Wes Wilcox hire, young guy, energetic guy, clearly thinks that it's easier to win at the University of Utah than he does in Sacramento, right?
Not wrong. Yeah.
Hashtag tank note. But yeah. So the first two hires, on paper, home runs,
right?
For sure.
And I think it speaks to, to Jensen's mindfulness of the situation that he's in, right? That he's still committed to Dallas, but he's going to finish the season there, but he needs people in place that know what they're doing in terms of building the roster. This is the time that programs are reconstructing their roster for next season. And so to have, these two pieces in place with the experience, with the resume, the relationships and connections and know-how, I think just super smart of Alex to get these done right away. So, he's got a lot to do to finish out his coaching staff. And I think for a lot of Utah fans, there's a lot of interest in what's going on with Andre Miller. And it seems like at two different points that this was essentially done, but for whatever reason, here we are, now, 2-3 weeks later after Alex was officially named the head coach, and and still nothing on Andre Miller. And it's unfortunate, but just kind of based on what we've heard, Andrew, I think it's not trending the way that we thought it would. It's like I said, it seemed like it was a done deal at two different junctures in the last couple weeks, and now it seems like this is. I doubt that this is going to happen basically right now as we're talking at 8:30 p.m. on Wednesday night. I doubt that it's going to happen. What do you feel about Andre Miller and all this?
I'm just wondering if we undervalued Grand Rapids as a city to live in,
Do we need to put respect on Grand Rapids' name? Is that what we need to do?
I think we might.
Might have to schedule a vacation out there this summer.
Yeah, the spring break of the Dakotas. It's a weird deal, because like to your point, it felt like it was a lock at several different points. I think a lot of people felt like Andre joining the program this offseason was more of a lock than Alex joining the program at one point, and now it's sort of trending in this other direction. People got to make their own decisions, and that goes for both Andre and for Alex, and whatever's best for them and whatever's best for the program. But it certainly is a surprising thing. But I would add that, everybody expected Andre to be the next hire, like once Alex was in. And going back to what we just talked about, the fact that he got himself an elite recruiter and a general manager first before sort of worrying about the sexy alumni hire, again, speaks to, he's taking this thing seriously, and
very much, yeah.
And he's not going to, put the program at a deficit for anything.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, just some additional context with Andre, and I think it's important to understand. And I don't know that this is the case in playing into the situation right now, but going back to last spring, when there was a lot of buzz about Andre joining the program under Craig Smith, and Craig ultimately passed on that, and what we've learned since then is that Andre and the workload that he was looking for was not significant. It was pretty minimal. If that is the case here, I don't know. Again, I don't know for sure, but just that context, knowing that from what transpired last year with Andre, I do wonder if that is something that maybe has hindered this process, has been a road bump of sorts in potentially this coming together for Andre and Utah and Alex and all of that.
Yeah, and I think that the relationship between Andre and Alex is going to be fine, right?
Right, I do too.
And so so I look at it and I think Andre will be available to Alex the same way that he was to Craig and to Larry, the same way that Hano is, the same way that Doliak is, right? Like, I think that, because you have Alex in place, you're going to have people, willing to do whatever they need to do to help the program, even if that's not in an official capacity. And so, if it doesn't work out, which, like we said, it's sort of trending in that direction, I think it's ultimately going to be fine. For all parties involved. I think you're underselling what happened last spring. I mean, didn't we hear that Craig changed all of the locks and turned the lights off when Andre was knocking at the door at the Huntsman Center? And, isn't that what happened?
Listen, what else did Craig do wrong? Let's just spill the tea here. Let's just let it rip the Band-Aid off.
I heard he took his jersey out of the rafters. I don't know if that's true.
Louise. I mean, is that what Craig? That what he was dragging out the Huntsman when he left, when he got can't was the Miller. Yeah. Oh man,
yeah, he's
Craig.
He's got that hanging in his house now.
I'm taking this with me.
Yeah, you can't stop me.
Oh man, Craig! Shout out to Craig. He was always fun to talk to.
Pod.
Oh man, that would be fun.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
It's hard to see him doing it, but
yeah, yeah. All right. So beyond Andre, there's been some buzz that we've heard regarding what Jensen wants with his staff. Early on we heard that, potentially there was going to be another NBA assistant or an assistant with NBA ties that also had international connections. Have we heard anything further on that, Andrew? What do we think of that?
I think the only thing that we've heard really is, that it's going to be a short bench. Like it's going to be a fairly small staff. Mark Harlan gave an interview last week where he talked about sort of quality over quantity. Don't know if that was a shot at another program in the state that's got 35 assistants, but my
hard
guess,
to say.
Hard to say. I mean, Mark wouldn't do that. He's above that.
He is above that. He learned a lesson.
He learned. Yeah, he learned his lesson. I'm gonna get you in trouble.
Listen, Mark's got thick skin. He can handle it.
Runnin Hoops opinions do not reflect those of the Blockcast. No, but so I think that we'll see another name, come from those ranks, I guess is what I mean. Like we haven't heard any names. They've been hard to come by, but somebody that's either an international coach right now that Alex knew from his time overseas, or, somebody that is, I don't want to say languishing because that's not the right term, but somebody that is, in the NBA that's maybe looking for an upgrade or whatever. I think we could certainly see that.
Yeah, I think Jensen wants to add at least another piece from his NBA ties. I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, kind of leaning into that quality over quantity, as Mark put it. And, I think obviously Utah's going to need recruiting ties. It's great to add from that NBA experience and to have that sort of professionalism on staff. I think that that's going to be tremendous. But I think you can't just have chilies. You can't just have one dog. You can't just have one chili dog.
That's right.
You need another guy. And so we have heard some buzz about a potential hire of, an in-state coach. And I think we're going to hold off on his name, but I think a lot of Utah fans will, assuming that it gets done, caveat to put that out there, which, again, hearing things, but I think it would be a really good addition to the staff for a multitude of reasons beyond just his connection here locally, the local ties that he brings, but he's really accomplished a lot in his time coming up in his career.
Yeah, and I think there's some natural dots that folks have been connecting from the start on potential local coaches that may be available. But yeah, I think that you've got to have somebody that can walk into those local gyms, right? The academy, whether it's the academies or the public schools, and that's got the Utah Under Armour gear on, and they've already got some built-in relationships with the high school coaches, right?
Yep.
And the academy coaches and stuff like that. And so and frankly, I think somebody who has seen the talent in the state over the last 3 to 5 to 10 years that can give Alex and Chills a good evaluation of, okay, these guys from this place, they're good, like they're well coached, or whatever the situation is. I know we're beating around the bush here, but I think that I think that it would be a smart hire for Alex, for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think to your point, right, with his experience and the resume that he has, he's going to bring those connections from really valuable places in the state in terms of the talent and local talent, and he's worked at schools here in the state that have had success. At each time each program he's been with, they've had a good amount of success, and he's learned, what it takes to recruit, at those schools, and you bring that now to Utah, and that should be a good thing. So, I hope that fans can piece together who we're talking about without naming him. But yeah, I think it would be a good hire, and there's a connection to the past as well with it, and I think that that should be the dead giveaway. So Utah fans, don't come at us if you can't figure it out. But beyond that, what else? What sort of composition do we see with the rest of these open spots? I think that would be what he would have 3 left, right? 3 open spots left, assuming that's the number, which I assume it is, 5 assistant spots.
I think so. And then maybe like a director of basketball operations as well. And then, of course, some of the other support staff. Yeah, it's funny because when Alex was hired, there was the obvious Andre Miller connection that everybody was making. But then beyond that, we were like, well, what relationships does he have? Right. And then he pulled Coach Chills, right out of Memphis. And it was like, oh, okay. Hey. And so I think that there's probably a lot of people that like it, you and I could spend hours and hours and have spent hours and hours trying to even drum up some names of people, that we think could join the staff. One guy that intrigues me, I'll just throw out a name if that's okay. But one guy that intrigues me is John Judkins down at Utah Tech. He's the head coach there now, or at least I think he is. I don't think he got fired, but maybe he did. Anyway, like if he came in like an ops type role or an assistant type role, just kind of that older guy, steady hand, kind of thing. That's the kind of hire that intrigues me, outside of, Alex pulling an international guy, Alex pulling some more NBA guys. Just again, somebody who knows the landscape, kind of knows the score, but also understands Utah and understands, what needs to be done to kind of elevate the U. But yeah, that's kind of where I would put, just my thoughts on, kind of the makeup of the staff.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that would, John Judkins, looking at his resume, he's been coaching for a long time and spent a lot of time at different places, and a lot of that has been spent in Utah, and I think that would be valuable. So, it seems like there's going to be a nice mixture of different backgrounds, NBA, college, recruiting, player development. So I think, with what Jensen has done with these first 2 hires, I think he's got guys in place that can take care of the heavy lifting right now and on the recruiting trail, which will allow him to take his time filling out the rest of the staff. There's been a lot of questions about, well, he needs guys to recruit. And I think with Chills and with Wilcox in place, you're going to have a lot of connections and a lot of things that'll get done with those 2 alone. And I think this is such an important time for Jensen, right? He is laying the foundation of his program and the future of the program. I would much prefer he takes his time getting the right people around him to build this for the future rather than make some hasty decisions and get, just to get guys in place to recruit. I think you want him to take the time to get the right people and to be wise. And I think, again, he's mindful of all of this. Again, given the fact that his first 2 hires were the guys that he needed in place to take care of the recruiting stuff right now. And I think that's afforded him some time to finish out the rest of his staff.
What do you think? I'm going to turn around and play host.
Yes,
here.
Please. Yeah.
What do you think about the current staff? I mean, the Josh Eilert post on X the other day felt like a goodbye.
It did.
And I don't know, what everybody else's status is, but it, whereas before we sort of thought, oh, well, obviously he'll keep somebody. It feels like maybe not, but I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that.
It's been interesting on that front. I haven't heard anything specifically over the last couple of days about them, but I know that Alex Jensen was in Salt Lake City on Tuesday, with the end of the season, and meeting with coaches, meeting with players, I assume. And so, perhaps we'll start to hear more trickle out over the next couple of days on that front. It's been interesting. So initially, when Jensen was hired, Eilert was viewed as the favorite to stick around, to remain on staff at Utah. And given his background with his years in the Big 12, and look, like I get people get hung up on, well, he wasn't an assistant coach, he was an ops guy, he was a director guy. Like, he's still very involved. He was very involved with the program. He was around the program every day. He went on the road with them for many road trips. Like, he knows the Big 12. And I think there's value in that. I think with the connections that Lo Leith and David Evans have, as recruiters, I think there's value in that. And, after that initial buzz of Eilert, those two, Leith and Evans, became the buzzword. I can't exactly remember the timing of it all, when it all started to shift, but each of these members have had moments where it seemed like, okay, this is trending positively for them. So, I don't know what to make of them, but I do think like there's a decent chance that we see at least one of them remain on staff. I think it would be wise for Utah to have a holdover from the staff. I shouldn't say wise, but I think there are reasons to buy into that there could be a holdover, if not two, given what they bring to the table, again with Eilert's background in the Big 12, and then with the recruiting connections that either of those two have. I think it would make sense that if they meet with Alex and they convey the right message, they buy into his vision, I could see it working.
Well, and they're both still fairly young guys, right?
Yeah.
Young in their coaching careers, certainly at the collegiate level. And, having somebody that's, not only can sort of, help steer you through, this transition into, coming back into to Utah and how things have been, but also like people who want to learn, like be a sponge to all of these other guys that are coming in with experience. Like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have, guys with their ties also sort of learning at your feet, so to speak. That's sort of speaks to Alex's non-existent ego, but
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you're on. And I think, again, Jensen, he's an introvert. Like, he's a quiet guy. He's not a man that's going to impress in a opening introductory press conference, but he's very mindful of all these things, and he's very aware of, what's going on around him. That was evident in terms of how Mark talked about him in the questions that Alex asked, and he never gave us examples of the questions that Alex asked, but he's very inquisitory, right? And he's mindful of what needs to be done. I think Alex will, he'll come into those meetings or came into the, he went into those meetings with an open mind with those guys, and we'll see what we learn over the next couple of days on that front.
Yeah, the media was real soft on him in that press conference. These local,
just the softest.
These local shills,
the thin-skinned media.
Yeah, you bunch of thin-skinned media people.
The thin-skinned media. All right, let's move. Let's transition to some player talk, roster talk, and all that. Obviously, we talked about our guy Hunter Erickson committing to Hawaii, but there's been a little bit more action beyond that. So far, we've seen the following players enter the transfer portal: Jake Wallin, Brandon Haddock, Hunter Erickson already, Lawson Lovering, Miro Little, Keanu Dawes, Jerry Huang, who have all entered the portal. And obviously, within that group, we've already seen one withdraw, which was the big news that dropped today. Keanu Dawes withdrawing from the portal. So let's start there, Andrew. Just how significant was that for Utah to hang on to Keanu and to have him back as a piece to build around next season?
Oh, it was huge. It was to me as big as when Brandon Carlson decided to come back for his fifth year. Here's a guy that the fans have kind of really rallied around and embraced as as somebody that they want to see be the face of this program, right? Felt like he was underutilized under Craig and some of those other things. He's come in, he's had, 5 or something double doubles in the time that Josh Eilert's been the coach. And he's just, Josh at halftime of the Butler game called him Johnny on the spot. That's really what he has been, right? He's a guy that's in the right place at the right time a lot of the time. And so, I know that they had wanted to get it done without him having to go into the portal and risk, getting a big time offer from somebody else. But the fact that he went in the portal on Saturday night, or that's when it was announced, and it, on Wednesday, he's a Utah man again, huge, just massive, I think, for the program. And it gives Alex, it gives Coach Chills, right? It gives all these guys somebody to point to and say, okay, if you're a guard, right, there's your 4, right? There's your, there's your guy that you're going to be able to pass to on the low block. And, I think it just starts to open things up for people to catch, whatever the vision is that Alex has by building around KD.
Yeah. And so again, I think with Alex, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Alex was in Salt Lake City Tuesday, and so this coming the day after, I think that probably speaks to a positive interaction between Alex and Keanu, and also probably a little nudge from Alex saying, "Hey, let's get this done with Keanu." I think it's pretty significant, and you kind of touched on it, but I think this was so important for the fan base, right? Because it's been a tough time for Utah fans following the program, especially over the last couple of years, especially after last year, where it seemed like you finally turned a corner. You had a lot of positive momentum, and then you lose, star in Davon Smith, triple double king. And a guy that you felt could lead you into the Big 12, you lose that. And so I think it was so important for Utah to bring back Keanu for obvious reasons on the court, but I think so much more importantly for the fan base and to continue this positive momentum that they've generated with the fan base. With Alex coming in and, these exciting hires that he's made, to now have Keanu, withdrawing from the portal and being kind of that centerpiece that Alex can build around, because as you said, Keanu he's Johnny on the spot. He just does so much. He's just become so productive, and it's so effortless for him. Like, he put up 19 points on 8 shots against Butler, and you go back to UCF, it was the same sort of thing. He's putting up near 20 points on minimal shots. It doesn't take him a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of, he doesn't need a lot of plays going towards it. He just finds a way to produce. And I think to have that with it seems like his game is evolving even over the last month. And I think that's exciting because, now you bring in Alex, who, as using something that we talked about earlier, but knowing what it looks like with the NBA and knowing Keanu, he's got the body, he's got the athleticism, can develop his game, I think help him evolve even further, I think is exciting. So to have that in place, I think is really important. Now, for the rest of the roster, with Dawes withdrawing, there's still a handful of guys in the portal. Of the guys in the portal, who do you think is most likely to return? Who do you think Utah needs to bring back?
Of the guys in the portal, Jake Walline's the guy that jumps out at you for all of the same reasons, really, that Keanu jumps out at you. He's a guy that made a big leap his second year, right? Or it's in his sophomore season, I guess I should say. Jake had some up and down moments, and that there are some things that Jake, needs to work on. But I think that, he's a guy that, again, with those local ties, a guy that the fans can really embrace and rally around and give Utah kind of another face of the program while they build the rest of the roster. So Jake's the obvious one for me. I think he's going to have some pretty significant interest. I think his NIL number is going to jump this year. And so it's just going to be a matter of, and this is the discussion now. It's not a matter of whether you want him back. It's, do you want him back? Does he want to be back? And can you get that number right to, build the rest of the roster? But I think if you go into this transfer portal season where, again, we're already seeing guys make visits and everything like that, with your 3 and your 4 kind of locked in for next year, that's a huge place to start from.
For sure. I think Jake is at the top of the list, and I know that he's got a lot of interest from the in-state programs, especially the one up north in Logan, and so it'll be interesting. On that front, Keanu Dawes. I didn't mention this, but heard that Baylor was the program pushing for him, and so to get him back, to have that back, and I think is big for Utah. So with Waylene, sort of a similar story. He didn't make the leap that Keanu did over the final month, but you do see the progression from where he was in November and December. He made significant jump in his game in January and February, and I think he's somebody that he's the ultimate glue guy, right? When he can do everything, he can handle, he can rebound, he can defend multiple positions, he can create a little bit. The shot needs a little bit of work, and I think that's the big focus for him this offseason is honing in that jumper, especially from behind the 3-point line. But I think he would be an excellent piece to bring back, and I think, and we've heard that Keanu Dawes was the top priority, but Waylene was like a 1B to Dawes. So we'll see what happens, but I'm with you there. I think Waylene is the most important player for Utah to bring back of the guys that have entered the portal. Lawson Lovering is going to be an interesting guy. I think there's, if you're Alex and, with his background, obviously with the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert and the success that he had there with him, having somebody in a similar mold, I think, that could be intriguing to Alex, to have somebody that a center like that can really impact things defensively. And I think Alex probably can draw a little bit more of an impact out of him, with schemes and all that sort of stuff and the way that he'll teach. But I'd be curious, what do you think? What do you think is going on with Lawson Lovering?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I mean, Lawson was kind of one of the whipping boys of the Craig Smith era, right? Yep. Along with our guy Hunter and Raleigh.
Yep.
But you still can't teach 7-1, and I think we saw that in this Butler game with that screen guy, right? Like, he comes in with his goggles and, like, you're like, who is this guy? But he's getting buckets and he's around the basket. And I think, to your point, Alex, just fundamentally, Alex probably understands that you need to have your big men around the basket. And, Lawson was a guy, for whatever you think of his free throws, for whatever you think of his touch around the rim, like, they kept him away from the basket a lot. Yeah. And so I think that, the way that he would be evaluated by Alex, I think the way that he's being evaluated by other programs is, this is a guy that we want to anchor our defense, near the hoop. And I think he's going to get, and I'm fairly confident in saying this, high major interest out of the portal. If he can get that injury waiver for his first year at Colorado and he can go somewhere, I think you're going to see him in the Power 5 next year, whether it's at Utah or somewhere else.
And I think coaches see that. I think they see that impact. They see beyond, his offensive struggles and all that. I think they see the value that he brings. He impacts things defensively. And I think it will be interesting to see what happens. So would you say he's more likely, if you had to lean one way, if he's back or he's gone? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you think he's back or he's gone? Which way are you leaning?
I would lean towards gone.
Yeah.
That's just my gut.
Yeah.
I would lean towards gone, but I don't think it would take a ton either for, Alex to get in a room with any of these guys.
Yeah.
To share his vision and be like, look, this is how I think we can use you. this is how I think you were underutilized the last couple of years. Let's try to, make this thing work. So my lean would be that he goes, but if he came back, that also wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. Miro Little, the only other guy that's entered the portal, of note, I think it's fair to say that he's probably gone. He may already have a destination in mind, and so we'll see if that changes. But I am of the expectation that he's gone, and so let's sort of transition here. Guys that have not entered the portal that are still on the roster. Ezra Sarr, pretty surprising to say the least that he's still in the portal, given what the buzz has been around him. But hey, if he wants to remain at Utah, great. Mike Sheriff-Joms, Zach Keller, and then E.B. Traore. I think you've already acknowledged this, but Traore is set to return, which I think is great. I think he's a prospect that just looking at his physical, traits and qualities, understanding that he's sort of a freak athlete in the mold of a Kebaketa, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring him back. But of those other three, Asar, Sheriff-Joms, and Keller, who do we believe is most likely to leave? Who do we believe is most likely to stick around?
Yeah, yeah, friend of the podcast, E.B. Traore, right? Like he's my guy. He's my guy now, right? He's
your guy. Yep.
If people start trashing him on Twitter next year,
we're throwing fists.
Yeah, I'm coming after you. Just so be ready for that. I think we've used this word a lot when it comes to underutilized. I think Zach Keller was really underutilized this year. I think we've seen that in flashes against Butler, against UCF in the tournament game, and frankly, what he did against Utah in the Charleston Classic last year. Like he's got some range, he's got some hops, right? We saw the hops.
Hey, caught me by surprise.
Yeah,
I don't know that I've seen him get off the floor like that.
Yeah, and to me, like he strikes me as a guy, honestly, and I'm sorry to do this and invoke the name of Rick Majerus, but he strikes me as a guy that on a Rick Majerus team would be like uber productive, like an 8.8 rebound type guy. Like just the mere fact that on a pick and roll he can roll to the basket and get up, I think makes a big difference. So I would actually like to see Zach Keller back with the Utes. I think Ezra, we've talked about this, he's a guy that's probably got a bunch of people in his ear, and I could see Ezra being that guy, much like what we've seen with some other guys that have gone into the portal, where it's like so-and-so is in the portal, and then the next day they're committed to another program.
Yeah.
Right. Like I could see that with Ezra. He may not need to be in the portal to get the offers. Mongolian Mike, I think
this is the most interesting one to me.
Yeah, 50-50, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a 6'9" guard. We've seen some flashes of what he can do. Can this staff get that out of him consistently?
Yeah.
That's the big question with Mongolian Mike, right?
Yep. I'm with you. I think, Mike has the talent, right? We've seen it with what he can do, with the way that he handles, with his feel, with his passing ability. We've seen that, and he can score. It's not, it's probably one game a month, it felt like, and, he can really disappear, on the court. And I think that's the most frustrating thing with Mike, but there's clearly talent there. So he'll be a fascinating one to learn about over the next couple of days and weeks, however long this goes. With Ezra, I'm with you. I'm of the assumption that he's probably got a spot in mind, and just will put his name in whenever he feels like is best for him. But at the same time, like Ezra is such a unique character that perhaps he's done a 180. In terms, and maybe the buzz has been all wrong about him, but I know that there's been the buzz about him leaving is valid, and for good reason. The buzz being what it is, and that he'll enter the portal. But maybe something changes there. And I think if you can get him back, that becomes pretty exciting, where you've got a Keanu Dawes and an Ezra Asar in your front court. You're going to have to figure out how it works together, but I think Alex can figure that out, can tinker with some things. But that would be pretty exciting. And then, it feels like Utah's got, a pretty good idea of what their front court is going to look like with Dawes back and Traore. I shouldn't say a pretty good idea, but they're starting to get an idea. I think Keller coming back, I think he's dating a Utah women's basketball player as well. So, hopefully that if you're a Keller fan, you want him to stick around. You keep rooting for that relationship to go strong.
She's at least rooting for him to come back.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. So here, let's kind of reset the roster as we see it right now. Because we're going to start talking about transfer portal. So here's how I see the roster right now. Obviously, Dawes and Traore, those are the two guys that we know. And then Zach Keller, Jake Walleen. I'm going to include Mike Sheriff-Joms just because it makes more sense for him to stick around than to leave. And then Alvin Jackson, who I need to follow up with. But those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players on the roster. What do you make of that?
Let's go. Let's get those guys back to the crown. I think we can a redo. I think we can win it with those 6. No, I think one thing I was just thinking about as we were talking is all of the guys that we have talked about as probably leaving, but intriguing if they return, right? Mike, Ezra, those are guys that I think a lot of fans felt like were unjustly benched, for lack of a better word. Like there was some punitive measures taken against some of these guys for things that they didn't do on the defensive end. Let's be honest, right? Mike, Ezra, KD, right? Those 3 for sure. And one of the things that Alex said in his opening press conference that really struck me was you've got to give these guys enough room to work through some of the issues. And so I think to your point about maybe that 180 that some of these guys may be doing on where they were thinking about leaving, but they'll come back, is if they believe that they won't just, be punished for an errant pass or for missing out on an assignment here or there, maybe that's enough to get them to return. So just a thought, but yeah, I mean, as a, 6 guys, needing another
9. 9. Yeah.
That's insane, by the way. Right.
Yeah.
But it's a good, it's a good foundation, right? It's a really strong foundation that you can sell to a lot of the guys that you've been talking to that are in the backcourt.
Yeah. And I think that transitions us to the transfer portal and the recruiting that's going on right now. And I think with what we've seen so far, the big point of emphasis in Utah's initial recruiting efforts has been on the backcourt. With the guys that they brought in for their visits, Isaiah Watts from Washington State, a combo guard there, Cameron McDowell from D2 Northeastern Oklahoma State, a 2-guard, 6'6" 2-guard, and then Ashmal Dalalich from Pitt, freshman, 6'8". He's listed as a guard. He's probably more just a wing, good shooter. I think with who else they've been linked to in terms of the communication that they've had with players, guys like KJ Lewis, that was surprising, but I think more encouraging than anything else that you're taking a crack at a guy like KJ Lewis, who I loved watching. I thought he was fantastic all year long. He was the best player in transition that I watched all season long. He just always found a way to finish a fast break. He was just, and that's an area that Utah desperately needs to improve. It's been too many years where we've just been dreadful on these fast breaks.
Certified bucket getters. That's who they're looking at, right?
Yes.
AJ Lewis, Will McClendon, Isaiah Watts. Like, you go down that list. Do I dare say the name Dallin Hall on this podcast? But guys that know how to play downhill. It sounds super simple, but how many times have we seen, and this is across the board, guards at Utah in the last, let's even say 6-7 years, that start going to the basket and then either retreat or take a difficult shot. Like, I want Darius Johnson, right? Like, I want a guy that with 4 seconds left is going to get from just above the 3-point line to laying it in at the hoop. And those are the guys that they're targeting. I could not be more thrilled with that development.
And I think it sort of speaks to, maybe we're getting an idea of the vision that Jensen is going to bring to the team on the offense side of the ball. Obviously, being in the NBA, what are the big keys, right? You need space. You need the ability to get to the rim and kick out to the 3-point line. And so I think that, to your point, getting somebody that can get downhill, right? You need shooters, but you need a guy that can stir the cup, right? That can get into the paint, that can get those paint touches to force that defense to react and to get out of sorts. And you know, Davon was that for Utah last year, as close to somebody in that sort of realm as Utah's had in quite a long time. But I do think that's the big priority. And then you're seeing, other guys that they're linked to, other forwards and guys, other guards, I should say, that also have that ability. So I think that's the big point of emphasis is, bringing in some backcourt help, some guards that can get downhill, that can create for others and score. And I think that's super smart. And I think it gives us an idea of what this offense could potentially look like with that point of emphasis.
And I think if you can land one or two of those guys, or three, or, like we said, they need 9.
4. Shoot, let's keep going.
Yeah, right. The ceiling is the roof, as Michael Jordan would say. That's going to open things up for Keanu Dawes to be Norchad Omier.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a reason why Baylor was looking at him, right? Yep. Because we're going to see games next year. Again, if they can land some of these guys, we're going to see games next year where KD's got, 16 and 16, I truly believe that, because that opens things up. We'll go back to a thing we've talked about on this podcast before, but like putting pressure on the defense. And you look at the teams that have been successful this year in the Big 12, and they're all teams that have multiple guys that can put pressure on the defense, that then opens things up for their front court players, like Texas Tech, like, Baylor, like some of these other teams that made it to the tournament. So, I think, and I love the sort of the athletic makeup of some of the guys, even the JUCO guys that they're going after, like, these guys that they're plucking out of these, tiny gyms in West Texas or Oklahoma, right? Where, 6'8", but like quick and can shoot. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the big thing that Alex is bringing kind of from his NBA background. It's just this, okay, let's not only get guys that, know how to play, but guys that sort of jump off the page with their height, their weight, their athleticism.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That was something that I was going to hit on, was that there's a need to improve the athleticism, especially in the backcourt. I think that was the biggest lesson that we learned this year in the Big 12, was just how athletic these backcourts are, right? They put so much pressure on the ball, on the defense side of the ball, but they're also able to get to the paint consistently. And I think that is an area that Utah needs to address pretty significantly moving forward. And I think that's kind of why you've seen Miro Little hit the portal. He just, there was a lot of promise, but he's not the athlete that he needs to be at this level to have success at this level. So, we'll see. And what else is interesting? Kelvin Ode, high school prospect, top 100 prospect. He's more of a wing, but man, there's a lot of potential there. And you get an athlete like that who can defend multiple positions in the backcourt. I think is exciting. And again, it just speaks to, Chills, the connections that he bring. He's going to be officially visiting Odit. Speaking of Odit, is going to be officially visiting here in a couple weeks, which is exciting. And then, you just start to add these pieces together. And I think you're seeing an emphasis on athleticism, on athletes. And I think that's really what Utah needs is an upgrade in athleticism. And I think, we'll see how all that unfolds. But obviously, man, lots still to get done for Alex Jensen and this Utah basketball program. But, first two hires have been really exciting. Getting Keanu Dawes to withdraw from the portal is exciting. And then, from here, we'll see what else comes. But there's a lot of positive buzz around the program right now. It's been exciting. I think as exciting in a time as we've seen for Utah basketball in a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, is anybody even covering spring ball at this point? Like, does anybody even care about the foot? No. No, I agree with you. I mean, like we were texting earlier in the day, and we were talking about, like the Tipton edits and the Trilly Donovan gifts, and we, it's sort of like my kingdom to see Utah show up on those gifts, and with Kelvin Odit, right? Utah's on the graphic, and legitimately on the graphic, it seems. He's a top 100 kid. He's coming in for a visit. What a great, freshman, building block that would be, to land somebody like that. And so, being able to get in the door with some of these guys out of the portal is huge. It's huge.
Yeah. And I think too, right? So we've been talking about riding this momentum, right? The Alex Jensen hire. That's what got it all started. Then the two hires with Chills and Wilcox, you get Dawes back, start getting, a couple of these transfer portal guys to commit. You get a top 100 recruit to commit. I think, man, you do that in your first month on the job, first month and a half. We'll give him some time to get this all done. But you really hit a number of things, a number of complaints and frustrations that Utah fans have had, especially under Craig, with the way that he went about recruiting and all that. That would be just, again, a significant boost to the morale, to the vibes around the program and the fan base, I think. So, I think Utah's I think Alex is all mindful of this. I've said that very thing multiple times on this episode, and I think that's going to continue to be the case moving forward. So, Andrew, any final thoughts before we put a bow on this?
Well, I was just going to say, sort of to say nothing of reoffering those two 2026 guys, right? Junior County.
Oh, yeah.
And Catrell Harmon. I would imagine Anthony Felici gets a reoffer. Dean Ruckert, like some of these other guys that are in that class of 2026. Like if you can bring in some serious heavy hitters here, in the transfer portal or out of the 2025 class, and then all of a sudden you've got something that you're selling to these 2026 recruits, and it's less, come be the Jordan leverage of this program that steers us through, or Brandon Carlson, that steers us through some hard times, and maybe you get to go to the tournament as a senior. If you can get some of these, portal guys to sort of show what this program is capable of right away, then you've got something that you're working with.
Absolutely, man. I think that's key, and I think there is a significant commitment to the men's basketball program. I think, with being in the Big 12, seeing the commitment to those basketball programs at other schools, I think it's lit a fire under Utah and this basketball program. So I do think there's a lot of motivation to get this basketball program where a lot of folks hope and want it to be. And I think, we're seeing the first steps towards that. And so it's all about, we know that Utah, that Chills is working hard to bring the tuna in to the program, but it's going to take work. It's going to take effort, but he's definitely putting in the work to reel the tuna in. So, exciting times, man. Andrew, I appreciate you hopping on, sharing your time with me, and appreciate all you do with what you do with the Runnin Hoops podcast. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, yeah, anytime. Just, I love talking hoops. Obviously, we've been doing it for an hour now, and you've got a bunch of other stuff you're trying to get to on the podcast. But yeah, I mean, it is an exciting time, and there's so much, reason for optimism. We need to see that first new commitment come through, and I think that's going to be a moment where it really flips for Utah fans. Is the minute that let's say an Isaiah Watts or one of these other guys says Utah, that's when you're really going to start to see the buzz go high.
Yep. I'm with you there. Yeah. I'm with you there. All right, man. Appreciate you, Andrew. It's been a good chat, and we'll link up again soon. Spring ball isn't taking too much of our time for much longer, so I'll have plenty of time to talk basketball moving forward with you.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get you back on. I'll get you back on the old show here pretty soon. Maybe our off-season grade episode will be better this year.
Yeah. All right, man. Andrew, appreciate you. You do a great job. We'll talk to you later, man.
Thank you.